for being here. Last week I spoke extensively about how this government has become a criminal enterprise, and I pointed out 8 areas in which corruption has been institutionalized. I have a few more areas to add today, but I wonder if it makes any sense, because I had expected that we would have seen a vehement denial from the government of Guyana after I went into the specifics on corruption in these areas, that they would have been interested in pointing out to the people of Guyana that no, that we don't have 5,600 Haitians here, that they have not been given passports illegally, and they would have hardly, as they so often do through this useless agency, the DPI, on a daily basis regale us with a ton of extraneous, absolutely irrelevant to development information. And so, until now, silence. Now I have used the government of Guyana's figures. The figures pointed out, just with that category of person, that there are 5,600 Haitians who came to Guyana in the last 3 years, more who are here and have not departed. We believe they have departed, most of them, because they have been smuggled out of the country. But the government records show the arrival numbers and the departure numbers, and the disparity, the difference, is over 5,600. You would have thought that they would have jumped on that and say, Jagdeo has it wrong, here is a rational explanation for it. Silence. Just last night, I got a call from someone who knows a deportee who came in. He came in 6 months ago. He's gotten a new passport in a different name, and he shall be leaving the country shortly again. I plan to share the information with the police, but I suspect if I do so, they may tell their bosses, because they would not have an interest in catching these people, because the ring goes right up to the top in these ministries. Public security and what's the other one? Felix's ministry, citizenship. We have already seen another case where the police caught someone with an illegal ID card, took him to GCOM. GCOM said, that's not our ID card. And then the police released him with the ID card too. What was the purpose of apprehending him in the first place? So the government did not say anything about that. Silence. You notice they've been very silent on the fuel smuggling racket. Very silent on that too. They can't explain how the GRA will seize a vessel that has illegal fuel when the penalty is triple the duty paid value and confiscation and charges. That's the penalty. But in this case, they released it and took a small sum of money. They can't explain how the hundreds of, well, not hundreds, tens of new licenses for the importation of fuel has been issued. Quiet again from the government. I've spoken about the tampering with the procurement procedures. at various levels of the government. Notice silence too. I pointed out, and it's easy to find out, is it true or not that a person who is ranked number 17, that has 16 bidders with lower prices than that person, gets a contract when that person has the least experience? And I'm talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. And you see the big furor that we have over the state of the hinterland roads, and the confusion as to who should award the contracts, whether it is Ministry of the Public Infrastructure or Natural Resources. Well, it's a combined effort at ripping off and pulling down large sums of money. This goes largely quiet. It's very quiet. They're going to spend about over $2 billion on hinterland roads. But I can take you a wager, we're not going to get $1 billion worth of work. Not $1 billion worth of work, because it's the fashion in which it's being done. But again, they're quiet on that. I thought that is what they should be dealing with. And I don't want to repeat all the other areas that I spoke of last week. But I accuse this government of institutionalizing corruption, of being the most corrupt in the region or ever in our history. And you notice they just move on. They're not taking it on. Why? It's largely because, as everyone knows, you just go to people on the ground and talk to them, that the connections run all the way to the top of ministries. And that's why. City Council is another issue too. I hope that the residents of Georgetown know what's going on. Any audit in the City Council will land a lot of people in prison. Any audit now that they conduct in the City Council. But they will not audit the spending of the City Council since they took office, because you will see what amongst the over $1 billion of contracts that were given out to friends and families of the people at the City Council without any tender, without any form of tender. And they say they don't have revenue. And by the way, I don't care where the bylaws go. We in the People's Progressive Party, we are opposed to the parking meter project as currently configured. That this contract that they signed, because it started off, it was premised on a corrupt act, and we will not support it. So I still hope that President Granger himself would answer these questions, and that the media will do a bit more digging. Now there's one thing that I want to focus a bit more on today, because we've spoken about it in the past, and again, this doesn't seem to be getting any traction. It is the role of NISIL and SPU. And so we've heard now, in less than a week ago, that NISIL has issued $17 billion worth of bonds. So that means they would have received the money. They issued it, and that it was fully subscribed. So the SPU now would have at its disposal, or NISIL, I don't know which of the two, because it's murky, would have at their disposal $17 billion. Now, SPU is moving ahead. I gather they're going to do a road show across the Caribbean to raise the rest of the money, I presume $13 billion more. But we don't have a board for Gaisuko as yet. They said Mountain they will have one. But I wonder how many people have looked at the vesting order, where they transfer the assets of Gaisuko over to Nisil. The vesting order transferred the assets of 4 estates, and they were transferred free and clear of all liabilities. So it's just a transfer of assets. But if you read the vesting order further, you will see that 100% of the shares, the government shares in Gaisuko, has also been transferred to Nisil. So they could have easily, so the entire Gaisuko has been transferred to Nisil, contrary to the public belief and view that it's only the 4 estates that have been closed. So if you believe that there is confusion here, so they're leaving liabilities in a shell company, all the liabilities, took over the assets of the 4 estates, and then transferred the shares to. So it's a bit confusing for me, the 100% of the shares of the government has in Gaisuko. That means the whole of Gaisuko. So it's a bit confusing now as to who owns these liabilities. You have $32 billion of unfunded pension liabilities. That is where the workers will get their pensions from in the future. Who is going to assume that responsibility for that? So this needs to be urgently clarified. Urgently clarified. There's a group out there has $17 billion guaranteed by us, the taxpayers, that they're going to use for what we don't know. They have this murky arrangement with the transfer of the assets of Gaisuko. We are in the dark about what will happen to the liabilities of Gaisuko. And then they talk about privatization. But there are so many policy issues that you have to deal with before you could even talk about privatization. For example, or number one, the markets abroad, we have a quota. If you privatize at 1 or 2 estates and they engage in the production of sugar, how and on the basis of what formula are you going to allocate the markets between the state-owned companies and the privately owned companies? Secondly, there is a pricing formula for private cane farmers that is enshrined in legislation. Are you going to amend that? How are you going to treat that legislation? Are you going to insist that a private person follows the same formula? Thirdly, how are you going to deal with the land of Gaisuko? Are they going to be leased to estates or sold to them? Who is going to take care of drainage and irrigation on the privatized estates? These are just what tax regime, for example, are you going to give to the newly privatized estates? What about the valuation? Because you're valuing estates that are closed. Are you going, is it the formula is a liquidation value that you're looking at? There are tons of policy issues that need to be addressed long before you craft a framework for privatization. We have silence on it. I'm not even sure they're addressing the issue in all the complexities that it deserves. The approach has to be a complex one. And secondly, they're going to spend this 17 million, it's going to disappear, and we'll have nothing to show for it, and the taxpayers would be left with the money, with the burden. Or the banks will just come and seize if it's a bond collateralized in the first instance by the assets. We have not, the assets of NISIL, we have not seen the structure of the bond. We just know that the coupon rate is 4.75%. When we were borrowing at 1 and 2%, on with long-term repayment, like 20 to 40 years repayment. That is how government has borrowed concessionally for many years, 1-2% interest, 20 to 40 years repayment. This one has 4.75% interest, and it has to be repaid within 5 years, a bond. So it will be, that's all we know about it, but we're not sure that the assets, because that's what we heard at the beginning, that the assets of Gaisuco will be used to collateralize it. So if that is so, then the first call, not Gaisuco, NISIL, sorry, the first call for the bondholders would be the assets of NISIL. That includes not just Gaisuco properties, but all of other NISIL properties. And if they sell them and they can't come up with enough money in case of a default, then they will have recourse, a double guarantee, recourse to the Treasury. This is what we're hearing. We have to say to the bondholders, if you are engaged in something this murky, and when the PPP gets back in office and we find that that there has not been the required due diligence, then don't expect us to honor deals that are done in secrecy and corruptly and without the required due diligence, simply because you get a government guarantee. Those will be examined carefully, and the bondholders must bear some responsibility too to ensure that these resources are not utilized corruptly. So I just wanted to tell you this because it bothers me a lot. It's a large sum of money. Just imagine the total cost of the Berbice Bridge was under $40 million. And we did a 2,000 pages study on the bridge. We developed a prospectus that was sent to all the institutional investors. We passed legislation for the public-private partnership, all before we sought capital into that bridge. And look at the people, Christopher Ram, Anand Gulsaran. A ton of people were opposed to raising money through that process. And it was maybe about $30 million. $30 million. We have gone to raise $150 million US dollars. I'm talking about US dollars now. 150 million, 17 billion, or about 65 million US dollars, has already been about 80, this will be over 85 million US dollars, has been raised already by this government through a murky process, a bond that nobody knows the terms of. And Gulsaran is quiet, and Christopher Ram and all of the others who are opposed to raising the bond for a specific project. Nobody, we don't see all these big analysts talking about this now. Not even a study, no prospectus, the pitch was made privately to a few institutional investors. This is the problem we have, and I needed to spend some time on that for Guyanese to understand. If we're not careful, we will end up holding a few years from now the burden of all of this because of the incompetence and corrupt acts of this government. So I'm not sure that holder has a role anymore in Gaisuku if 100% of the shares have been transferred to NISIL. And just imagine, all of these decisions are made to raise this money in the absence of a board. So who is making the decision? Is it the CEO of NISIL? Is it the head of the SPU? Or is Winston Jordan doing this? Because you do not have a board to sanction any of these decisions. This must raise concerns among Guyanese. It bothers me. I'm going to issue a statement capturing some of what I'm saying here today a little bit later so that we can have greater clarity on this issue. I want to say we are very concerned about attempts to tamper with the NDCs, local government bodies, to gerrymander boundaries to suit APNU. Now, most of you would know that APNU suffered a crushing defeat in 2016 at the local government elections. Until now, they're shell-shocked. You didn't hear much about it. But the defeat was, like, in terms of numbers of people who voted, nearly 30,000. The difference between the People's Progressive Party and APNU AFC was 30,000 votes. Many communities, we had a total walkover, they didn't even contest in. So those votes couldn't even be counted because there was no election. And we won 48 of the 65 NDCs outright, and we tied 7 others. So in 55 of the 65 NDCs across Guyana, we either won those outright or we tied the constituency. Now, we won 3 of the townships, and they won the others, including the newly created ones. So clearly this bothers them, and they know that they're facing another defeat in the future. So to ensure that the optics are different, I've heard Bulkan, he's been having discussions with the GCOM now that they want to create 10 new local government bodies. And so once again, I think they're going to go to places like Madhya, where they believe in pockets where they're strong, and without any consultation like they did with Letem and with Maburuma and Bartika, declare Madhya as a township. Now, I want to say that in the Madhya area, you have 2 Amerindian title villages close by. And they have been trying to get them, Campbelltown and Mycobi, to become part of the township. Now, there is no benefit to being part of a township under this government because it doesn't mean greater development. It just means more taxes because then you're part of the tax base. So I had pointed out that Dog Point in Bartika suddenly find themselves, they have 5 acres of land, and they found themselves now in the township. Just imagine when the rates are assessed on 5 acres of land, what their taxes would be like. So that's all the benefit of being in the creating these new bodies. And in many areas where, like NDCs, where you may have a village that votes predominant or voted. Now let me say vote, because past tense, voted, because I don't think that will happen in the future. Voted APNU predominantly in the last elections. They want to gerrymander the boundaries by splitting an NDC like that, creating 2 new NDCs. So they can win in these areas. That is what is happening now because they fear another crushing defeat. Now we're watching this closely. As I said, like with everything else in this government, it's murky. Everything is done secretly. And I hear he's been meeting with GCOM. He should be meeting with the counterpart, the opposition, and talk about these things. Because boundaries, where they're drawn, etc., that's not for GCOM. So we're concerned about that. Now, most of you would have seen the big spat in the media over what took place at GCOM itself. And it's been no secret that we have complained in the past and we continue to complain about issues of diversity at GCOM. This is not an issue about a race issue. This is a fairness issue. This is about equity. This is about rights of people to be treated fairly, equally, and not have some PNC commissioners and a few new people in there discriminate against people for political purposes. So that is what it's about. It's about diversity. It is about fairness. It's about equity. The right of a Ghanese to be treated, if I apply in there, I should be treated fairly. And Dr. Luncheon has pointed out about the information coming to us now that he has had, that the APNU nominated commissioners are 0 rating in some cases some of the candidates because they're of Indian origin. 0, giving them in the interview 0 scores. And then marking preferred candidates, give them 100%. And in some cases, in almost every other case, where the top mark after the interview, the person who emerges with the highest mark gets the job. But in cases where they're Indo-Guyanese, they have to go through another test, although they get the top marks through the interviewing process. And that is happening right now in the senior leadership of GCOM. I was surprised that Vincent Alexander said, because so far we have been going anecdotally, based on the names that we have seen in the top leadership of GCOM, we can't count everybody in the villages and stuff like that. But the senior leadership here is what matters, the management structures. And then Vincent Alexander said, we don't keep information on ethnicity. And the same day he said that, the chairman of GCOM released to the media the composition of the staff based on ethnicity. So who is lying? Vincent Alexander? Is it the chairman? So this is the worry that we have. And this is about fairness, about the right to be treated fairly. That is it, as a Guyanese in there. So this argument about meritocracy, we will continue watching the issue. We'll keep pressing it because we believe that commission, the Elections Commission, has a critical role to play in the future. And we're not going to let up on ensuring that we expose every single breach that could lead to the elections not being free and fair. I don't know what this government is doing, so Marad is going out now, getting all the little boat people across the country, harassing them. The government wants to license teachers now. Oh God, they don't have anything to do now, or all of our teachers will have to go, probably get a license like medical council, pay a fee now to be licensed as a teacher. They want to put in a regulatory body for transport, public transport. All, this seems to be a pattern of behavior. Just trying to fix things that really don't need fixing now or can wait until you fix the big picture things. First of all, like crime, cost of living, jobs for our people. Those should be the priorities of the government. But our president goes off to reopen the Otachong Convention Center today. Thank you very much. Yes. Any questions?
Nothing on statement, you want to go on statement?
Huh?
Since there seems to be no question on statement.
Yeah, no. You're free to ask anything, not on what I said alone. Any other subject.
Okay, I've been helped with hydronics.
Yes.
So, first question, the sectorial committee you have on natural resources. I was at the last meeting, and all of the, the real questions, the important questions that were posed to the minister were posed only by the chairman of the committee. But you have, I think, 3 other members. I want to come across that in time, but don't you think that for such an important committee, the PPP should appoint some more of its hardcore members of parliament, people who are more au fait with what's going on?
Let me be truthful to you that yesterday, 1 o'clock, I had a meeting with the members of that committee. And I said that whilst I was happy with what took place so far, I'm not satisfied that we are in that committee, an important committee as it is. We are prepared, we do enough preparation to hold the government to account on critical matters to the country. And so we agreed that there will be a preparation before, that they have to caucus before, that they will seek guidance from the other MPs because we work as a collective, that some of them may not be specialists in the areas that they are going to be discussed, but we can have specialist assessments that will guide them in their questioning of the people who come before the committee. So for example, Patterson goes there to talk about a Myla hydropower project next, as well as the gas project. So most of our people are not specialists on hydro nor gas, but I think we have enough questions to ask about both projects and what they're doing now about electricity that will expose how vague this government is on a critical matter for our national development and for cost of living, such as power, and the supply of power, that they have absolutely no plans. And with good preparation, our members can do this. They're clever people. They're just not specialists in the areas, and that's why preparation, getting briefs, etc., before they go to meetings would help a lot. And so yesterday we met, we spoke extensively about that because it's a concern of mine, not only in that committee, but in the other committees, the standing committees. We're going to step up our level of representation in these committees.
Okay, sir, the government put out a second draft of the local content policy. Did you have a chance to go through this document?
I'm fed up going through things that this government puts out. And then, like yesterday, I think I dropped it somewhere before I came. No, I have it here. Look at this here. Imagine yesterday, the government, the DPI, puts this out, and this is supposed to calm our fears as a country that they are addressing the sovereign wealth fund. A flow chart. You can take this out of any textbook in the world on these issues. And here, they left out the biggest part. Actually, I see some people circulating it, that after the Guyana share of oil, before it goes into the sovereign wealth fund, it's a bribe taken here. This one here, that flows to them, their pockets first, and then here. They should add that in the chart. But after, imagine, 3 years at this, 3 years at the sovereign wealth fund. We had promises that 2016. Now they're saying we may get it in time for 2020. And this is what DPI says is a sign of progress. And I saw the thing about Rystad Energy. And someone really, I think I read in the newspapers, people question linkages. Not because a foreign company puts out a favorable report, a consultancy company, that we must all latch on to it. We have to question the motivation of these companies, and particularly consultancies for oil and gas sector. They would want to be favorable or put out reports favorable to oil companies because they get most of their business from oil companies. If they talk up the prospects here, then they may land a contract. So I saw almost 3 newspapers carried it as though it was gospel, and the DPI was running all over the place with it, saying we should have given away everything just to get ExxonMobil here. So I want to caution about this. It's almost like kindergartenish. This here, the DPI sends it out. Oh, the country should be satisfied. We have a flow chart now. None of the critical questions are asked here. I can ask you 30 questions from here to there that the government doesn't have answer. From when the money comes here to here. And none of it about, it's a complex issue. It has to deal with, like before, it's not only infrastructure and development projects. It's a whole ton of other things you have to ensure. Macroeconomic consistency. That is what happened to other countries that caused them to lose. So I'm not going to look at anything until I see a final draft before the National Assembly, because they keep changing every week what they plan to do. On local content, we have seen their definition of local content. By the way, I hire like 250 companies a month because my sister goes to Monrepo Market and Micah Market and shop. And it seems as though if one of the staff that I pay shop at another person's place, because that's my subcontractor, that if they come and go and buy 2 mangoes there from you, I have to list the man selling the mangoes to as being my employee. That's all I'm going to say for it now.
That government accepts that. What does that say?
That is the point. It's not ExxonMobil. It's our government. Shameless.
Yes, Mr. Jagdeo, Carcaba News Source. You've spoken repeatedly of persons securing fake documents, the guy with the passport, the Haitians, the person with the ID card. What is your assessment of this situation, which you says implicates at least 2 government agencies and runs all the way to the top?
Sure.
And have you considered the implications of not making that report to the police?
Yes, the thing is that there's one I definitely will. But that's why I started off. I gave the government's figures about people who are here from 2015 to now, 5,600 who stayed on more than departed, who arrived in Guyana. So the ministry could easily say to us, we issued 1,000 short-term visas, okay? And so people are in flux. and therefore 4,600 should be here, right? Because they didn't depart Guyana. So, and they're here illegally, or we've given them work permits, just some explanation. Nothing from them, nothing. How do they explain the discrepancy? And you know, the Haitians are not here in those numbers. You know that. And this is their figure saying 5,600 of them are here, more than that. You know they're not here. We'll find them. There are a few, working at different places, and those are people, and I don't have problem if people come to work and they do so legally here. But most of these people have departed and through a system. So it has to be that they departed illegally, because if they're not captured through the, if they're going that way, they should be captured in the Crabwood Creek or customs immigration database there. Remember, this is figure that they supply, and it's even worse for the Cubans. And I'll probably make the figures available to you sometime. That the Cubans is about 10 to 11,000 people who is supposed to be here. But we believe that there's another, as I said before, another gang working to smuggle them through the border, that is through Lethem area. Now, I'm not talking about 2018 figures, because the U.S. has now said that they'll process U.S. visas here in Guyana for Cubans. So you'd have more who will come and they'll go back once they get their visas. So I'm not talking about 2018 figures. I'm talking about cumulatively from 2015.
Mr. Jagdeo, just a quick follow-up.
So, but that should be a big concern of the media, to ask for explanations. Because he is the minister. If a minister says 15,000 people here in 3 years came in two categories, just Cubans and Haitians, there are 15,000 who came, more came to Guyana, but 15,000 stayed on in Guyana. Is that not a big concern? That is his number, saying 15,000 Cubans and Haitians are in Guyana, living here. It's unbelievable that nobody wants to look at this. Remember when the Brazilians were here, they were saying, oh, we're giving a lot of Brazilians and Indians and Chinese and stuff. But look at those categories. When I share the information, you will see that as many Brazilians who come in leave. And the same thing with the other categories. But these two categories, we believe, it's not people moving to Guyana, it's smuggled through Guyana. Smuggled. Trafficked through Guyana. For big bucks. And it doesn't make the news now. Or if that, the PPP was in office, would have been a different story. That would be front page every day. In some publications, I'm not calling which. Yeah. Yes.
There's been a little back and forth between you and the Ministry of Natural Resources after you would have said that Edison has withheld information, has been withholding information from you. Could you be more specific on what information was withheld from you by the other government, and what's
So, Truckman says he's very benevolent and very, a great person, a religious man. He asked ExxonMobil to meet with me, to give me a briefing. So I must, pay homage to Truckman for that mercy. Well, the thing is, I think I met ExxonMobil about 3 times in the past 3 years. So if that constitutes a regular briefing for him, it's not what I would determine as regular. And when I asked ExxonMobil about the signing bonus, I did ask about the signing bonus. They said, I have to get that from the government of Ghana. That was the last time I think I met them. I'd have to get that information from the government of Guyana. So I gave you a specific case.
Were there other quarries?
Yeah, there are lots, because when we come to a meeting, I'm not a dodo. So like, one time they brought in a big team. I think that was the second time, and I asked about whether the feasibility study has been looked at, whether it's wise to pump any of the gas into the wells to sustain production. Because I asked, have we studied whether the value in terms of incremental oil that we can get from pumping the gas that we discovered into the wells, because it will keep the wells going a little bit longer and maybe the pressure up. Whether that value could be compared with bringing all the gas onshore to be developed not only for power, but for downstream industries for exports. So if we look at the value added from using the entirety of the gas, and it comes up to $100 or $100 million. And we're going to get incremental oil only by pumping the gas down back into the wells to the tune of $10 million. Then it makes sense for, as a country, not for ExxonMobil necessarily, because this might be a bit inconvenient for them, but make sense for a country to insist that we get more of the gas onshore. So I asked whether they had done that comparison, and they said no. But I'm not sure even our government has that, because that is how you approach these issues. With future, let me don't go down this. I get like worked up when I talk about this, because we're squandering because of incompetence. We're squandering this patrimony. We work hard to get to this stage. It could be transformative. Because of uselessness, we are squandering everything.
But doesn't that show that they would have answered you?
No, they said no, they had not completed the study. They had not.
Sir, on that same topic, recently the Minister of Public Infrastructure announced or told the manufacturing or production sector to prepare for this gas for sure project.
I dealt with that last week, but again, yeah, sorry.
If you're saying that Exxon told you there hasn't been a feasibility study.
First of all, when he announced that a feasibility study was completed, ExxonMobil said in the newspapers, not to me, they made a statement saying that they had not done that. So that is a public information. That was not in a private conversation. But my point is this gas, are we talking about generation that will come on stream next year, generating capacity? Because right now, we have a system that doesn't have reserves, much reserves. So anytime the units go down, and we still have some older units, when they go down, you'll have a shortage, especially at peak time. So a Mile Fall, which would have brought in about, in 2017, some 160 megawatts of new power, nearly double our entire generating capacity, would have filled that gap. So what the old sets we had would have gone into reserves, and we would have used the hydropower. Now, power demand is increasing every day. We are already at peak, we don't have reserves. So you suppose if a mile is now coming on stream, you have to bring something else on stream. So they talk about the wind power. And we pointed out, if you buy the wind power, you're not buying capacity, you're buying just energy. Because if the wind stops blowing 10 times a day, it goes down to zero. You have to get a fossil fuel set to kick in at that time. When the wind comes down, to kick in to produce the 10 megawatts if you're buying 10 megawatts. I'm simplifying. So wind is not reliable. It doesn't blow all the time. You don't get the same amount of electricity. So you still have to back that up with something else. We were going to back it up with a miler. So even if you had gone to wind, you would have, the system would have been integrated. So that went off the table. Secondly, they said about solar systems. They have done some corruptly in the interior, no tender, but that's not integrated in our grid here along the coast. So that's not going to solve our problems along the coast. So the next thing is fossil fuel sets. So they said they went out to tender last year for 50 megawatts of power. They said heavy fuel oil or gas powered. Then a couple months later, they scratched out. They called in, they amended the tender and took out the heavy fuel oil, what we use now, bunker C, etc. So that means it's only gas powered that should come in on stream for this year. But where are we going to get the gas from? Who is building this gas main now? Because this is supposed to be power coming on stream now from that 50 megawatt power plant. They couldn't be saying build the power plant for 2022. Let me give you this. ExxonMobil starts producing oil, say in 2020. By the time they lay the pipeline, etc., say even a year, it's 2021, 2022. We need emergency power in 2018. What are they doing about 2018? So that is down the road. We're not even sure it will happen. Exxon, the gas coming in from Exxon. You can't bring the gas in before you start producing oil because it's only the same wells, etc. So it doesn't make sense. It's a timing issue. That's what we're trying to point out. What happened with this 50 megawatts that they were going to buy, powered by gas, because it couldn't be for 2022 and you put out the tender in 2017. You're waiting for gas, you build the plant and wait for 2022. So you had another supply of gas. You had another, unless you want to do it for a corrupt act. But they had some other supply. Where is that supply of gas now? If they're saying the emergency power. And what happened with that 50 million tender, the 50 megawatt? What happened to it? And so that is one. And then this 2022 project, they said some village, they're going to bring it in. You know, Patterson been looking, as I said at the last press conference, I thought, I was proud of him. Now I'm hearing in my village in Unity. They might bring it in Unity. That wouldn't be a bad thing to do. Yeah, but that's down the line. It's he's totally confused. Totally confused, this Patterson.
But GPL, just taking up on that, GPL has had, just a bit of clarity, they said that the problem so much isn't the generation, it's distribution, and that's what they're going to focus on. The same 50 megawatts, I think it was to be both, and one, the heavy fuel used first until this project kicked in 2022.
Oh, really? Well, you wait on GPL, yeah. That they're, and when the sets go down again, then we'd have issue. We've always had two types of losses. It's commercial and technical losses. Combined, when we got into office, it was over 40%. Then it fell to 20-something%. I don't know, it's probably around that level now, just under 20%. That is people stealing power and people who the line losses because of old lines, etc. But they're not going to make any big change in that. You're not going to save the equal amount to offset growth in demand from tackling the transmission and distribution mains. You're not going to do that. And so you have to have now short-term new generating capacity. You have to do that now. That is what we're saying. But again, like this, imagine that's a big corporation too. They're raking in billions. and from January to now they don't have a board. Imagine a board will take you 5 minutes. 5 minutes to put in place, not 15 minutes. I said 15 minutes the last time. They don't have a board, a board until now.
A board or a chairman?
No, the board has not been reappointed as far as I know.
Kian Robert, Hedgehogs. Sir, with the economy performing at 2.1% last year, do you believe that the 3.8% projection for 2018 is too ambitious?
I read somewhere that actually, let me say something. The guy, I saw there a little funny thing about this guy who launched his new party. Their party, but he had a letter in the newspapers I read last week, and I think he hit all. Read the letter carefully. I know he doesn't like us too, but it was a good letter about the disaggregation in a little bit more complex way. The numbers generated by the central bank and the trends, things that we've been talking about for a while now, and picture things that we have been at budget speeches, etc. My concern about the deteriorating balance of payment, the deterioration in our reserves, the government's borrowing at the central bank from a surplus deposits. The government used to deposit with our central bank. Now we have a $50 billion overdraft at the central bank, the government. So all of these things are creeping up upon us. They'll hit us one day, and that's when you would see the big deterioration in our dollar and the inflation rate and everything else. It's creeping up. So look at that. So I think Jordan should just read his letter. I think Jordan should just read that letter, because he doesn't listen to us. Maybe you'd listen to this guy. And what everyone has been saying, there is a hollowing out of the economy that we don't see. We see the slope in construction and retail trade and the fall in forestry sector and sugar and all of that. But there is a hollowing out of our variables, these ratios that mean something to people's life. When the government is living above its means, and it's borrowing like crazy, spending on things that are not productive, and we will suffer the consequences in the future. So I've stopped paying attention to what Jordan says. I stopped paying attention. Every time that he gets confronted with that, he whips out some study, a routine study that they do. Oh, the payment systems at the Bank of Guyana, and give you 40 pages on payment systems, that any technical report he gives, the payment system, we'll computerize it, and there'll be 45 transactions, hoops you have to jump through before you get the transaction done. He just shifts the entire attention away from the things that a minister of finance should be looking at, which is incentive for a pro-growth policy, a pro-poor policy. That is your framework, your budget. Everything else must support growth in the economy, job creation, and it must support enhancing welfare for people. And his budgets seem designed to take away, undermine growth, and take away welfare from people, benefits. And so he misses the big picture. That's why he said he used to write my speeches there. And yeah, he used to, of course, no, they'll go and collect a bit from the central bank, and you put it all together. The exchange rate depreciated by 16% last year. The long thing that you read out in the budget, that means nothing. It's not the policy, it's not a macroeconomy, it's not the engine that drives it. The description of the BOP improved marginally by 5% last year and deteriorated in relation to some nonsense. He thinks that's the budget. We have fetish for those things, the long speeches and this big thing, and he used to write my speeches. He never sat in the room where the policy was determined. And that's what he doesn't understand. I keep saying to him, you gotta get away from these ratios and all of this descriptive thing and understand the engine that drives the economy.
Next question, sir. You spoke last week about the need for audit of the 460 million contract costs. If government continues to delay this audit, what will be the next step?
You know what surprised me? That ExxonMobil said, we're open to the audit. And our government put the figure in the contract without doing that first. Again, it comes back to the incompetence of our government. Imagine the people saying, you can audit. So the government should have said, okay, we'll get a firm to do this at your cost, at the cost of the company, and we'll get a firm, we'll hire the firm, we'll do it, and whatever the figure is, we'll put that figure, the audited figure, in the agreement. Easily, that could be done, because they had no pushback from ExxonMobil, but they didn't even raise it. They just, people said, for 60 million, Trotman said, put it in there, put it in.
But my question was, what should the opposition next move? Should
I think
government
it
not
should.
do an audit?
I think you can't agree to any figure unless you have audit. Enough questions have been raised about whether those are legitimate expenditures, etc. Expenditure, and therefore we have to, before those are accepted, there has to be an audit. And ExxonMobil said they're not opposed to the audit. So we should just get along with it. They already made a mistake, a huge fundamental mistake, by putting it, agreeing to it in the contract. A figure that is unaudited, but this is the pattern.
I'm sorry to be so repetitive,
No.
but will the opposition be taking any, will you be taking
No, I can't. We can't because the company said they're now unwilling to have the audits done. All we have to do is ask our own government to pursue this. That you understand what I'm saying? We can't take everything to Parliament. We just no. He will say that PPP caused that too. Like that's a new thing. PPP caused him not to audit the figure and put it in the contract. This is the every day. Look at the statement that Trotman Ministry, after I said release the list, and his ministry put out a long statement that they have been keeping the Guyanese public informed, and this has been the most secretive government about that contract. And he, with a straight face, said that. How do you deal with someone like that? I had to point out 8 or 9 things in a response to him where they lied to the Guyanese public about the same contract. And he said, oh, I don't know what Jagdeo talking about. We've been keeping the Guyanese public informed about all these matters. So that is the mindset they have. I wish that they will do it. Do it.
But if they don't?
It has to be done. We will do it.
This 460 was inherited, given that that the monies were spent before 2015. This is in the
Yes.
party period.
Yeah.
My question is, does your government, does your party believe the figures that were put, was this 460? Do you believe it's an accurate or inaccurate?
If I say that to you, because I'll be just like the truckman, and because you have to submit the invoices. You have to say, here is a contract for the rig. The government of Guyana then says, yes, we can verify that. This costs $30 million US. then the next question should be, was this competitively sourced? Could we have gotten it for $20 million? Because the going rate at that time was $20 million. Then was it a company that is related to, say, the oil company? Because if it's a related company, the cost could be inflated that did the rigging, the drilling. These are questions for everything that comes up, that the expenditure that is made by the company. At the end of the day, you aggregate all of those and you come up with a figure. And you say, yes, this is real. Because we've gone through it. We've asked the right question, we've gotten the answers. That is how a government should operate. Thank you. Okay.
One quick follow-up from your initial statement. In relation to the Jacob issue, is the party in possession of any evidence to prove these allegations of bias in employment? And what do you believe is the intention behind this registration?
Well, the thing is that I pointed out some of the scores. You're gonna, when they finish hiring the top staff of GCOM, we will see what the hiring threw up and how many people applied. And we do have, we've heard about it, we'll request this information about the score sheets. And this is why the People's Progressive Party believes that anyone who is aggrieved should go to the Ethnic Relations Commission, any Guyanese, to have a full-fledged investigation. So what we have heard, and information we have, is not seen as partisan, will be determined by the Ethnic Relations Commission. They can determine whether it's factual or not, whether the scoring system was tampered with, and when people emerge, like Indo-Guyanese emerge as number one after the interviews, they still did not get the job, or were the APNU commissioners are opposed to them. We know cases like that.
But you're saying that you don't have any evidence.
No, I'm not saying that. You are saying that. I'm just telling you exactly what I'm saying. You are saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying there's enough evidence there to prove it. You just look at the list. The list. I just pointed out the contradiction between the Vincent Alexander and the chairman. I pointed out that there's low scores. Why don't you go and ask the commissioner, or the chairman of GCOM? Is there a case where the number one ranked person after the interviews is not going to get the job because the APNU people don't want that? You ask him about that. That's your job, but I don't.
But what do you believe is the intent behind it?
The intent is, again, I believe, to tamper with the machinery, to get people sympathetic to APNU. And it's not every, that's why I say it's not a racial issue, because you think the rice farmer who is suffering in Berbice, the black rice farmer, will ever get a job in there? He wouldn't. They would search out for a new person and put them there. And so that's what I'm saying. Thank you.